This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant, coming at you from a mythical land the elders once called the Office. Here's what we've got for you in tonight's show. We'll learn about a COVID crisis inside prisons in one of America's hardest hit states. Then, a new study suggests that herd immunity might not be possible. But first, tonight's headlines. The US makes up just 4% of the world's population, but we now have 25% of the world's COVID cases. About a fifth of US cases are coming in Florida, where the governor says more testing is behind the rise in cases. But health records show 48 hospitals in the state have now maxed out their ICU capacities.
It's inevitable that we're going to see deaths rising in the state.
In California, the two biggest school districts in the state are planning to start the school year online. This came after the governor issued new restrictions in the state, which closes indoor dining and bars. It was a controversial move that ultimately came down to the Supreme Court, but today the US carried out its first federal execution in nearly 2 decades. A US District Court judge had put a hold on the execution Monday, and an appeals court upheld it, but the High Court ultimately overturned it. Daniel Lewis Lee was executed this morning by lethal injection. Lee was convicted of killing a family of 3 in Arkansas back in 1996, but the victim's family was against the death penalty, arguing he deserved life in prison. 2 other executions are scheduled for later this week. 6 days after she was presumed dead, officials say they've located actress Naya Rivera's body in Lake Piru in California. The Ventura County Sheriff's Department says before she drowned, Rivera used her last bit of energy to save her 4-year-old son. This is what they know about her final moments.
It was during that time that her son described being helped into the boat by Naya, who boosted him onto the deck from behind. He told investigators that he looked back and saw her disappear under the surface of the water.
Authorities don't know the cause of Rivera's death yet, but Lake Piru is known for its strong currents and dangerous whirlpools. Since the actress's death, a petition has started online asking for signs to be put up to warn people of the conditions there. Rivera was best known for her role as Santana on Glee. She was just 33 years old. Managing the spread of the coronavirus has proven difficult, even among people who can more easily practice social distancing. But maintaining the spread of the virus among prison populations is a very different challenge, because social distancing isn't always possible and hygiene products are limited. In this next story, Newsy's Jamal Andrews takes a closer look at outbreaks in Texas prisons.
In Texas, COVID hospitalizations have jumped by more than a quarter over the past week. Some of the worst outbreaks in the state are concentrated in prisons and jails.
It's just a scary feeling that he's worried about us out here, and we're worried for him in there.
Adriana Varial's father is being held at the Stiles unit in Beaumont, Texas, which has the second highest rate of active cases in the state. Varial says her dad tested positive for the virus and has been on lockdown for weeks.
How are you not going to give him his medicine for 4 days because he's in quarantine? Because of the fact that y'all are low on staff. Staff is out because of COVID, or they don't want to go to work because of COVID. And they're just kind of just left in the dust, to fend for themselves like this.
Along with the Beaumont prison, there are major outbreaks in San Antonio and East Texas facilities where active cases are at more than 490 and 780, respectively. With at least 94 deaths confirmed to be COVID-related, the most of any state prison system in America, critics are starting to question whether neglect is as dangerous as the coronavirus.
I'm not sure that I would categorize that response so much as one of confusion as much as sort of negligence.
Carrie Blakinger from the Marshall Project has reported on several problems throughout the Texas prison system in connection with COVID-19, from terrible food to dead bodies in prison cells.
So I think that the mood of the people I'm talking to is sort of varying degrees of desperate and terrified. They've got no visits. They've got limited phone use, if any phone use. They've had no programs. In many cases, they have been sitting in their cells 24 hours a day, not getting out, haven't seen sunlight since March, have been living on these terrible, brown bag meals that arrive at sort of random hours. And in some cases, they've been locked in alone. In some cases, they've been, locked in with a cellmate. And this has been the conditions for months during a pandemic.
The Texas Department of Criminal Justice started widespread testing in mid-May after 30 inmates with the virus died, including one man who was just 12 days away from completing a 20-year prison sentence. Since March, the ACLU of Texas has been sending advocacy letters and has filed multiple lawsuits aimed at reducing the number of incarcerated people throughout the state.
The number one step is that you really have to reduce the population of these facilities, because in so many places, social distancing is just completely impossible. And things like cleaning and sanitation and providing masks are all very helpful. But ultimately, if you have 100, 200, 300 people who are all using the same bathroom, the same sink, who are getting food in the same place, it's just impossible to prevent the spread of the disease. And then once people are sick, it's very, very difficult to contain and provide adequate treatment and medical care.
But rather than take steps to reduce the number of people behind bars, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed an executive order limiting who could be released pre-trial from county jails. As it stands, Texas has more total coronavirus cases amongst the state's prison population than anywhere else in the country, leaving family members of those prisoners feeling helpless.
We care about my dad very much. I love him. I would hate for something bad to happen to him in there.
Jamal Andrus, Newsy, Chicago.
Twitter's trending topics are like a box of chocolates. You never know.
As coronavirus spreads across the country, you might be looking for ways to make sense of it all. Newsy is here to help with some deeper context, explaining and reporting on the pandemic. Virology, only on Newsy. Be informed, not influenced.
I did not think it would be this difficult for me to obtain a medical abortion.
Why can't you pick this pill up in a pharmacy?
It has real risks for the mom.
It's a bureaucracy.
I felt like nobody was going to be able to help me.
Ford repackaged one of its greatest hits. A new White House campaign urges you to just find something new. And Mythbusters fans say goodbye to a show alum. Here's what's trending. Bronco is trending not because of another low-speed chase.
Cars not exceeding the speed limit.
But because the Ford Motor Company decided to revive the old SUV that was discontinued in 1996. Ford introduced 3 new models of the Bronco to give the Jeep Wrangler, the #1 off-road seller, a run or roll for its money. We'll leave the specs rundown to somebody else, but what's really cool about this release is that a secret team of Ford employees called Bronco Underground got together in 1999 and worked for more than 20 years to help bring this model back. Hashtag Find Something New is trending after Ivanka Trump announced a White House-backed campaign urging people who are unemployed or unhappy with their jobs to, well, it's in the name, folks.
You have more options than you think. You can do this.
You will find something.
The campaign website features resources for people looking to change up their career path, but the campaign itself wasn't well received online, where a lot of folks are calling it tone deaf to the hurdles facing many Americans. The announcement comes as more than 1 million people filed for unemployment claims last week, bringing the total number of people who have filed since mid-March to more than 44 million. And Grant Imahara is trending after the former Mythbusters co-host died in Los Angeles. Imahara was an electrical engineer who also operated R2-D2 during the Star Wars prequels and worked on other movies like Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and The Lost World: Jurassic Park. A spokesperson for the channel that hosted Mythbusters said the cause of death is believed to be an aneurysm. He was 49 years old. As federal and local governments, as well as health experts, debate when and how to safely reopen schools, some teachers feel like their voices have been excluded from the conversation. Newsy's Lindsay Thies spoke to some teachers about their concerns.
Teachers across the U.S. tell Newsy they're concerned they're not being heard.
Teachers aren't being included in the conversation. And if you refuse to do that, you're going to have an incomplete solution whenever it comes time to implement it.
What is going to happen if we have a student that gets infected? How are they going to test us as teachers? How are they going to test each student that is in the classroom or it has interacted with the student that has been infected?
There's no way that we're going to be able to distance the kids. There's no way that we're going to be able to protect ourselves.
And when it comes to the health ramifications of returning to in-person classes too soon, to say they're worried and anxious is an understatement.
I can't imagine the trauma that a kid is going to have if a teacher dies, you know, like if their teacher dies.
If I have one student who has a bad roommate who ends up getting them sick before they know it, they could be getting other people sick.
It would be an enormous mistake and that it would be morally reprehensible for us to return right now in the state of things.
Health experts say there's a variety of risks that come with reopening schools. The CDC guidelines for reopening say full classrooms carry the highest risk, but even reducing class sizes and 6-foot social distancing presents some danger of spreading the virus. Epidemiologist Ali Makdad tells Newsy the makeup of local coronavirus cases and whether they're increasing or decreasing should play the biggest role in how schools form their plans to start back up.
Unless you take care of the whole picture, you're going to fail.
When it comes to planning, Dr. Joshua Sharfstein with Johns Hopkins says schools should have more than one plan, depending on the virus spread in their area. He adds teachers with an elevated risk should be able to opt out of coming to work.
If there's just an enormous amount of coronavirus in the community, like we're seeing right now in communities in Arizona and Texas and Florida, I think it's going to be very hard to open schools in the middle of all that safely, or as safely as possible.
Research shows right now children are very unlikely to get seriously ill from the coronavirus and even less likely to spread it between themselves. But adults, we're talking teachers, paraprofessionals, school administrators, remain at risk. A recent Kaiser Family Foundation analysis found 1 in 4 teachers are at greater risk of serious illness if infected because of pre-existing health conditions. And while testing, contact tracing, and isolating sick people is key, doctors say they can't solve everything.
That's a really tough question as to how do we employ testing in the school system. Quite clearly, doing it in any kind of a broad-based, ongoing fashion becomes logistically very difficult and very expensive.
Dr. Mark Rupp is the chief of infectious diseases at Nebraska Medical Center.
People tend to put too much of a reliance upon the testing. And what folks need to understand is that it's really a snapshot in time. But if they're in the incubation period, which can last as long as 2 weeks, anytime from then to the end of the incubation period, they could start to shed virus and get sick.
By June, more than 55 million U.S. children missed months of in-class instruction. And while many questions remain about the logistics behind reopening, experts say even if done extremely well in areas with low spread, low risk, there's still a chance for COVID-19 to spread in a school near you. Lindsay Thies, Newsy, Denver.
I know you're probably already splitting your attention between this show and whatever's on your phone right now, so take an extra moment and hit us up on Twitter using this hashtag.
Sure. Memes and cat videos are fun, but actual news might be a bit more useful. Follow Newsy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get straightforward, opinion-free news right on your social news feed.
In case you've forgotten, it's an election year, and when November comes around, many voters will likely be looking for a safe way to cast their ballots. But in this next story, Sasha Ingber explains why the reliability of mail-in ballots is still being debated.
With the general election less than 4 months away, how voters can safely and reliably cast their ballots during the pandemic is still up for debate. New reports find a number of mail-in votes were cast aside this year, enough to sway a close race come November. More than 100,000 ballots were rejected in California's presidential primary alone, according to the Associated Press. Thousands more were rejected across the country, according to an NPR analysis. The main reason they were ignored? They arrived too late to be counted due to delays in the mail. Newsy spoke to Ben Hovland, the head of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, which helps states prepare for elections.
Are you concerned about the pressure that this could put on the postal system?
Certainly that's a concern. One of the things that they did to assure us was, say that while this may be more mail ballots than we've ever seen before, the post office is designed for a volume that far exceeds elections in the sense of, you think about the holidays or Mother's Day when they've got, millions and millions of cards in the mail.
Hovland says despite some bumps in the road, states are doing a good job of preparing. But whether they should extend their deadlines and accept all ballots postmarked by Election Day is a tug of war between disenfranchisement and security.
We want to strike a balance between having a window that's sufficient for people to have their ballot executed, but also have enough time for administrators to do their jobs well.
Selena Stewart, a senior director of advocacy and litigation at the League of Women Voters, tells Newsy the organization has filed lawsuits across the country, including in New York, where a staggering 14% of mailed-in ballots in 2018 were discarded because of verification requirements like signature matching.
We have lawsuits like in North Dakota, New Jersey, New York, and places like that to make sure what are the reasons for those ballots being declared defective. Is it a signature, a lack of signature? Is it postage? What are those? How can we remedy those in advance?
They're asking for a notice and cure period, which would allow voters a chance to correct errors that led to their ballots being rejected, and also could delay election results. It comes as President Donald Trump continues to sow doubt about mail-in voting, recently claiming people are now just seeing how bad, dishonest, and slow it is.
With elections, we see that the 50 states run elections 50 different ways. The biggest advice that I can give to Americans who are watching this and thinking about how they're going to interact or vote this November, it's do things as early as you can.
Sasha Ingber, Newsy, Washington.
We know that coronavirus survivors have the presence of antibodies, which can tell whether you've already been infected while also warding off new infections. But we're still learning more about COVID-19, and results from a new study suggest that some survivors can lose that antibody immunity within months.
A new study found that people who were previously infected with the coronavirus and recovered may lose their immunity to the virus within months. Researchers in London tested a group of recovered COVID-19 patients and healthcare workers to monitor their antibody levels over time. 60% of patients had strong antibody responses during the peak of their infections, but 2 months later, only about 17% had those same antibody responses, and others had no detectable antibodies at all. Researchers fear that if coronavirus recovery depends on strong antibodies, and if those antibodies drop off in a short amount of time, achieving herd immunity may be impossible. They say the virus could become as common as a cold and that people may need to be vaccinated more than once. Dr. Katie Dewars from the King's College London, the lead author of the study, said, infection tends to give you the best case scenario for an antibody response. So if your infection is giving you antibody levels that wane in 2 to 3 months, the vaccine will potentially do the same thing. This study has not been peer-reviewed, but with so much still unknown about the coronavirus, researchers are hopeful that any new information about antibody responses could bring us closer to effective treatment and prevention. According to Johns Hopkins University, there have been roughly 13 million confirmed infections worldwide and more than 570,000 related deaths. For Newsy, I'm Antoinette Miller.
We really appreciate a little counter-programming here on In the Loop. There's plenty of room to worry about the coronavirus while also delving into other stories like diversity in the wine sommelier community. We'll explain it when you're back.
Every patient was a dollar sign. It wasn't about how well was the treatment done. It was about how much did you make on that treatment.
On a personal basis, I've watched them drilling perfectly healthy teeth.
I do not think I was an aggressive dentist.
Losing your perfectly healthy teeth. How dare you try to do that to me?
We're not really sure that Wall Street is the best place to make medical decisions for us.
Nothing's wrong with making money. If you're doing it ethically, absolutely not.
The wine industry is governed by the Court of Master Sommeliers. It's basically the Jedi Council of wine, but instead of levitating objects and whipping out ancient weapons, This influential nonprofit sets the standard for a sommelier's work, which is to be a wine expert. In this next piece, Mark Greenblatt explores how calls for racial equity across the country have prompted some sommeliers to give up their elite status in protest.
If you're complicit with the way it's always been, then well, you're racist too in one way or another, you know, and that's a real problem.
Richard Betts became a master sommelier 17 years ago, earning the most coveted title in the American wine industry. But today, Betts says he's giving up his title, renouncing his membership in the Court of Master Sommeliers, the elite nonprofit that controls who gets into the group and who does not.
If they're influential in ways that are inconsistent with, my moral compass, then I can't be a part of it.
Betts is a former board member on the court, a group he says has kept people of color away from leadership.
Wine doesn't get better by being exclusive. Wine gets better by being inclusive.
Acclaimed wine professional Tahira Habibi recently went public about her own trauma with the Court of Master Sommeliers.
There are 4 instructors, and one of them says, they're kind of laying out rules, and one of them says that in order to speak, you need to call her master. And they stuck with this rule for the 2 days, and it literally crushed me. Even when I went to speak, I'm thinking like, there's no way they're going to say that to me. And it did. It happened. Nobody in that room thought, hey, maybe this is not okay. And so from that point on, I never dealt with the Court of Master Sommeliers again.
In response, the court recently tweeted, "We will cease use of the singular term master in favor of the full term master sommelier," and it announced a new diversity committee, but made no immediate changes to who's running the show. The court doesn't post pictures of its leaders online, so Newsy gathered photos of the court's chair, vice chair, other board members, the chair's emeritus, examination director, and education director. Of the 22 leaders the organization listed here, all but one were white. Just this week, though, they added a 23rd name to the page, another white guy. And if you click over to the About Us section of the court's website, where the court highlights all master sommeliers, well, the only picture you'll find here has, once again, a whole lot of white in it.
It's a big problem, huge problem. I mean, why don't they take the diversity committee and put them on the board? Just add them to the board. I mean, right now the diversity committee is going to make a recommendation to the board, but is the board going to hear it?
Just how many people of color are master sommeliers? We asked the court, but they did not respond. But after Betts renounced his membership, others followed. Brian McClintock, a star of the Somm films, and Nate Reddy resigned next. And more tell Newsy that they're considering doing the same. It's just the latest scandal for the organization following a Newsy investigation last fall where multiple master sommeliers spoke out, criticizing leadership for a lack of transparency in how they handled a cheating scandal, while also threatening to suspend the membership of anyone who spoke out with even an utterance of criticism of the court.
I took this as, be quiet, don't question our authority, or we'll kick you out.
If we're saying that the Court of Masters is the pinnacle or the peak of aspiration for this industry, then you guys will need to challenge each other to make this industry and this institution accessible for everybody. I mean, enough. Enough.
Mark Greenblatt, Newsy, outside Washington, D.C.
That's it for our show tonight. For the next 24 hours, I'll be trying to expand my own palate from boxed wine level to Master Sommelier. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, but don't go anywhere just yet. More top stories from Newsy are headed your way.